why we are running certain systems or philosophies.
Thomas, go ahead with your thought process and Dave's thinking and what questions you might have.
Dave, I want to go back a little bit to the Russians and the Czechs because you indicated last time when you spoke, and I found it very interesting, that one of the strategies against the Russians was actually to keep the puck, to play puck possession game in the offensive zone when possible, and that it was not necessary that you would get the puck to the slot or get a scoring chance, but just keep the puck so that the Russians, when they go on a counterattack, would be a little bit more tired and not as dangerous. If you could speak about that, please.
Yeah, I'll tell you, a couple of years into my coaching, we had stressed all the time, get the puck to the net, get the puck to the net. And we took a lot of shots at times that were not great angle shots, and they would start their attack. And so we started to realize, we're starting their transition game by some of our attack principles, getting the puck to the net, bad angle shots, this kind of thing. And so I learned very quickly that, puck management reduces the time you have to defend. So if you can hold the puck, if you can strike, for sure. You can strike to the net, you've got to take that. But if you're, there's numbers back, you got layers of coverage, you can't get through it, try to maintain possession, look for things, probe, try to find things, but be smart with the puck. And I think that was something we did against the Russians and the Czechs, because we just felt that we couldn't play a wide open, forceful attack all the time. When we could, we had to go for it. But I can tell you, so many games, Thomas, their best chances came off our best chances. We got a scoring chance. We went for it. We got 2 or 3 guys caught deep, and boy, transition, it was gone. And so we tried to hold the puck, make them stop in defensive zone coverage was one of our plans, so that if they started their attack, at least Makarov was standing still covering the slot. He wasn't swinging out, anticipating something, so like that. So we tried to play a little smarter. And certainly at times, I thought we had chances to go to the net and didn't, but there's always a little bit of limitations to everything you try. But one of the things when Laura was talking that I wanted to mention, Thomas, and to everybody, one of the things about saying why, telling guys, people, players, why you do things is, I always felt it was going to be very important for the last half of the season. Before I would go in between periods, I just stand outside, and I always had the door of the dressing room. I had a little stopper, and it was always slightly open. I just stand there and I'd listen to the guys coach themselves. And I realized, okay, we're doing it right. Maybe we're not good enough, but they know what to do and they know why they're doing it. So I always felt I could go in and say, hey guys, I know what you're talking about and I agree with that. And here we go. And so I just felt I wanted the team to learn to coach themselves a little bit, not just always rely on what I was saying. They had good ideas. They understood. And so that's why you teach why.
I would like to ask you, if it's okay with everyone, how your coaching style and teaching style evolved from university coach, Western Hockey League coach, then national team. And then, of course, I'm very curious what happened with you then as a head coach of the Flames. Mm-hmm. What adjustments did you have to make as a coach?
Yeah.
And as a person too, personal growth. And then, of course, you became later on assistant coach, not only with NHL, but also with the national team at the Olympics. So if you would carry us a little bit through the evolution of yourself, not only as a coach, but also as a person.
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say would be, I wish when I started coaching that I could have been an assistant coach first. And then evolved to become a head coach. Because later in my career, when I was an assistant coach, I thought, this is amazing. This is the best job in hockey. The guys want to talk to you. They're a little bit apprehensive about approaching the head coach possibly, but the assistant coaches, the lines of communication are always wide open. And you can have fun with the guys and socialize maybe more than as a head coach I did. So that's the first thing I would say. I'll take you back in my career. When I coached major junior hockey, Laura, way back, maybe your dad wasn't even born then. I don't know. Back in the 70s, it was really old school hockey. You know, I was in a league with people like Patty Janelle, Ernie McLean, and they were authoritarian guys, great coaches in their own way. And a big part of their coaching was, I wouldn't say it was intimidation, but to a certain degree, the players were very, very respectful, maybe even a little fear at times, because they demanded things to be done in a certain way. So at that point in time, you're a little bit of a dictator, actually, and you kind of think that the players don't have enough answers, so you've got to provide them all. And you soon learn that isn't correct. And then I went to the University of Saskatchewan, Thomas, and I was very lucky to go to a program that had won 6 games in about, I think 6 games in 8 or 9 years. So I was like Santa Claus when I came in, because they wanted to change badly, and I represented that change. And I really found that's the most fun I had coaching, that in the national team, because you know, the players were so focused on trying to improve. They wanted to change this program, and they did. They did a terrific job. And so I learned a lot then about, you know, as a coach, you're part of the equation. You're not the biggest part of the equation. Everything will come from your players. You have to try to find a way to make them realize they can get more out of themselves. And if you can do that, that will turn things around and really get going. So that was my biggest outcome, coaching the Huskies, and working, you know, coaching against people like Claire Drake and George Kingston. Automatically, you were going to learn, because every time you played them, you saw so much that they had adjusted to your game, so you had to be on your toes. So I learned a lot there about, you know, being really alert to everything, making sure that you were aware that coaches were going to adapt and had to be one step ahead in your coaching. But I really learned the most important thing: players are the difference makers, not the coach. And then I went to the national team, and that was really interesting for me, because I had a little bit of international experience, not a lot though. I had been gone to some seminars in Europe. The Huskies, we had toured Europe. I coached the national junior team, which is international competition, but I was still very much a novice. So I got George Kingston to work with us as an assistant coach. And he was phenomenal, because, I mean, this guy understood hockey very well. He had studied the international game, Thomas, and he brought so much to our coaching staff that it was really impactful for me. And I really learned a lot from George. And with the national team, it was interesting, because there was no parity. I mean, the Finns, Russians, Swedes were all better than us most of the time, especially the Czechs and the Russians. They were really a cut above us. The Swedes and the Finns, we could make it work, but against the Russians and the Czechs, the room for error was so small, it was hard to play them. And so I learned a great deal there about some of the importance of tactics. I mean, yes, your players are important. The environment you create is important, but tactically you have to be smart. And so I learned a couple of things. I learned one thing that I thought was really important, which was spacing on the ice when we played against the Russians and the Czechs. Balance, so that there was manageable space between defenders, yet we had enough balance that we could defend and attack. So our positioning was always so important on the ice, because with good positioning, good awareness, and good communication, you can defend more ice. When you don't have those things, you can't. And really, defending is easy. To me, you know, defending is simply numbers, layers, gaps, communication, anticipation, awareness. That's easy stuff to pick up. The offensive side of the game was more difficult, and I learned more. I learned a lot with the national team about defending, Thomas, but I also learned a fair bit about attacking. A lot of it we just couldn't do. It was great stuff. The way they stretched and made these long lead passes, and the way they would stretch out and come back underneath to the puck. Some of those things were concepts that were hard for players to get, and they were so natural to our Europeans. So I learned a lot about defending. I got a lot of great ideas on offense. Not all of them were applicable to our situation, because we were always in a 6 or 7 month development program to get to the Olympics and things like that. So And then going to the Flames was very interesting because when I went to the Flames, you have to understand where I came from. I came from the national team, which was, I was important enough that because I had some experience, players did want to listen to me and they did want to try to do things. And so when I went to the Flames, at first, I think I tried to teach too much. I can remember once talking about forechecking, for example. We had a meeting about forechecking, and I talked about, simple things like, all decisions are a function of distance. I talked about read your teammates as much as you read the opposition. Pressure, recover, replace. The length of the pass determines whether that's required replacement. Things like that. And I can remember looking out there and all these glassy-eyed players thinking, holy God, is this guy going to be like this? How long is he going to last here? I think they were glad it only lasted 3 years. Anyway, so I learned there that, the players know a lot, but still some guidance. They need some help, and you got to get them organized in a certain way. But I did learn one thing when I coached the Flames, Thomas, is that you have to give good players with some extraordinary skill and talent a chance to do that. Whatever you want to do tactically, can't imprison those guys and not allow them to do those things. So when you have a Theron Fleury and a Joe Newendike, they do things. I mean, Theo was going to skate by to the offensive side of the puck all the time. But 80% of the time, he was correct. And in those situations, he generated scoring chances. Now, and sometimes he didn't. We got scored on. But, you have to accept those things. So as you get to pro hockey, you realize you have to have a plan. You have to have everybody trying to play to the plan to a certain extent. Some guys are given some exceptional status because they have exceptional skill and drive. And the hardest thing in the game is to score. That's the hardest thing in the game, is to score. Defending is easy compared to scoring. And so your offensive guys, you got to give them a little latitude, a little extra. And I learned that with the Flames for sure. And that was a really good experience for me. I really thought that pro hockey was good. It was interesting to me, though, and Thomas, I'll tell you, my first observation, I remember we started playing preseason games my first year, and I expected the game to be faster. I'd seen it I'd seen a lot of TV, and I'd seen a lot of games, but I thought from behind the bench, maybe it would be, and it wasn't as fast as I thought it would be. And then, of course, I realized it's because interference was allowed. I mean, in those days, you could put your stick on a guy and hold him up, and it was flagrant. Flagrant. You could hold your pins for 15, 20 seconds in D-zone coverage. So the interference factor really slowed the game down. And when I look back at the playing the European teams, touch passing, the speed of the game, how the red line was not a barrier to them. They would the far blue line wasn't a barrier. They would straddle or shut down, whatever, and get a kick out or straddle across and find a seam. So, I learned a lot from the Europeans. That I took some of those ideas to the Flames with, especially forechecking. When I worked on forechecking in the NHL, I realized I learned so much about forechecking from the international game that we started to teach a lot about when to forecheck aggressively and when to contain. And at first, the guys, that was the very, Jacques Lemaire was starting to trap a little bit in New Jersey because he had played for a Czech, he had played for a Swedish coach in Switzerland who played a 1-3-1 kind of structure. And Jacques learned in that system and he brought it to the NHL. And I was doing a lot of contained forecheck, aggressive forecheck, reading the situation. So that's one of the things that was a little bit of difficulty to get the players to buy into. But all of a sudden, they're smart players. They realized, this is very interesting, they realized when they contain forecheck, they don't have to work as hard. And so I was caught in that trap, my own trap, pardon the pun, because they wanted to always trap. I said, whoa, 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 whoa. When it's appropriate, we got to forecheck. We just don't trap. We got to forecheck when we can. So those are the pitfalls and the fun you get coaching. But they were great lessons for me, and I really enjoyed the fact that my coaching careers had so much variability to it. That's been really very satisfying for me.
If I may continue on a
Yeah.
specific, more of a tactical question.
Yeah.